Did you ever just wish you could have a second pair of eyes look at something that you see on your screen? Well, that's this video. We are here to talk about remote desktop and remote assistance here in Windows 10. So this is going to be fun because we're actually going to do it and not just talk about it. So to get started, one of the first things we want to do is head over to the remote desktop area. And that's going to be inside of our right click on our start button. And we're going straight to settings. We're going boom, right there. We could have clicked start and typed in settings and found it that way. But we're doing right click on start and we're left clicking on settings. Now inside of settings, where we're going to head over to is system. And inside of system, this is where we're going to scroll to the bottom on the left side. And here we find remote desktop. I'm going to go ahead and click on remote desktop. And what we see here is that by default, remote desktop is turned off in Windows 10. Now with remote desktop being turned off, that means remote users can't access our system. Now if we wanted to allow a remote user to connect to our computer across the network and gain access to our system and literally be us on the system, we can slide the slider to the right and it says, are you sure? You and users selected under user accounts will be able to connect to this machine remotely. And I'll go ahead and click confirm. Now let me chat about this a little bit more. When you turn on remote desktop, someone can now remotely connect to your machine. And when they connect to it, they're going to authenticate utilizing your username and password combo. Well, what if I don't want to give out my username and password combo? Then a remote user would have to have their own username and password on your machine, which means you'd have to create a user account for them in your machine. So if you want 5 different users to be able to remotely access your box using their own username and password combo, they need 5 accounts. That's what that means. Otherwise, you're sharing your username and password for them to gain access. So this is remote desktop, and there's a couple settings we can modify here. For example, there's power settings, which we can go into, which is just show settings and talks about power and sleep. We don't want our PC going to sleep and then not being able to remotely access it. Also, making our machine discoverable on our network so people can see it. We have settings here that we saw previously in our network settings, and this is where we found things before of network file sharing, as well as the idea of password protected sharing. So these are taken care of us by default. Now we're going to scroll down here for remote desktop settings, and what we can see here is the name that people are going to target when they use remote desktop as a tool on their computer is going to be the PC name of student PC_1. That is the name of my computer that we are on right now that we just allowed people to connect to. Down below, user accounts. I was just talking about this. Select the users that can remotely access our computer. By default, the user that can access it is the student username with the password for the student account. Now, if you wanted to add other people to be able to access it, we would click add. And now inside of here, we'd be able to type in the different usernames or group of users that would be able to remotely access our machine. You'd put those in here and we would then select OK. Now, continuing onwards, at the bottom, besides just user accounts that can have remote access, if you don't know how to even use remote desktop from a remote machine and use it as a tool, there's a lot of links here for help. And Windows does a great job for that. So what we want to give a try now is we want to try to remotely access this computer. But I got to do something first. In order to remotely access this, people are going to need a username and a password. And if I check my student account right here, change account settings for the account on my machine, what we'll be able to see is I don't have a password. So the student account sign-in options, my account does not have a password. So I'm going to add a password so we can actually remotely access this machine using remote desktop. The new password is going to be Cisco123 because that's awesome. And the hint is going to be, you know it. And with Cisco123 as the password, we're going to utilize that with the user account of student to remotely access this machine. So let's give it a try. I'll load up a different operating system. So here we are in Windows 7. I'm going to go ahead and click Start, and we're going to use Remote Desktop. And here it is, Remote Desktop Connection. And then what I'll do is I'll type in the computer name that I want to access, student PC_1, and I will click Connect. Now, as I click Connect, it says, ooh, you want to connect? All right, you're going to use the user account of student, but what's the password for that account on the other machine? And that's Cisco123. And I'll go ahead and click OK. And what's going to happen here is my Windows 7 machine is going to remotely connect to the other machine of student PC1, and I will have complete and utter control of that machine using that user account. It says, do you want to verify? Yes, we're going to verify with a certificate. It's just talking about certificate authentication and authority. And now the connection will go through. So here we are with remote access on the other machine at this time. We are remoted in, and let me change the view so you can see the top of my window. And at the top of my window, you can see here that on my Windows 7 machine, we are connected to student PC1. And with that being said, I can just, minimize, and I'm back at my Windows client machine for Windows 7. I can bring it back up, and I'm back in the remote desktop connection for the student PC1. So I'm going to change my window again, and we'll continue. So from the Windows 7 machine, I literally have taken over the Windows 10 box. And what's really important to note about this, if I go take a look at the Windows 10 system again, what does it look like? On the Windows 10 machine, it's logged off. When the remote user connected to our machine with a student account, our current account that we were using, which was the student account, got logged off. And if I log in on my side, on my account here on the Windows 10 box, let's take a look at what happened to the remote session from the Windows 7 box. Take a look. Once the user on the Windows 10 computer itself logged back in on their side, we got disconnected with our remote session. So go ahead and click OK, and we're back here in Windows 7. So that's remote desktop. And now we have one more item to discuss, and